Well, travel is interesting right now. Welcome back to another travel news episode. If you're just meeting, I'm Robert Witham. I'm a former newspaper journalist. I now report on travel news. I scour the news for stories of interest to travelers and those who love the great outdoors, so you don't have to. And I am finally back after a hiatus all last week, although I did put up a few travel videos, just not any travel news. I think I announced that on a community post on YouTube, but I was at Cocoa Fest from Monday through Friday. Cocoa Fest 2021 at City of Rock State Park in New Mexico. Fantastic time, great event, as was Lollapalooza a few weeks before that. So anyways, with all that excitement going on, I just decided to give myself a break and enjoy the experience rather than stressing about trying to make a bunch of videos. So, but I'm back now. I did also put things on Patreon during that time frame, just about every day, I think. So if you like to know stuff earlier, you like to know more details that are not shared on YouTube or social media anywhere else, you may want to join me on Patreon. You can do that for as little as $1 a month. Link to that's in the video description below. Well, I've been making my way from Wyoming, northeast Wyoming, to Quartzsite, Arizona, via Texas and New Mexico this year over the past 5 weeks. During that time, I have made a few observations about travel this fall, and some of you watching this have no doubt had similar experiences, but I thought I'd share them since it's fresh in my mind, since I've just yesterday arrived in Quartzsite area. First is fuel prices. Fuel prices are crazy. You've certainly seen this in the news and experienced it yourself already. So I ran the numbers. I track all of these things, and so I ran the numbers today to share my experience on this trip from northeast Wyoming to Abilene, Texas, then to City of Rock State Park in Faywood, New Mexico, and then to Quartzsite. So going through Texas was definitely a detour, but once I was in Texas at Abilene State Park, it was pretty much a straight line to Quartzsite, going through about 30 miles from City of Rock State Park. It was just north of Deming. I had to go through Deming anyway, so it was the going to Texas was the big detour. Well, here are my observations in any case. I want to note that I run premium grade fuel to keep the engine happy in the van. That's on the advice of mechanics, but it also improves my fuel efficiency noticeably, so it's actually about a break even in terms of it costs more, but I get better fuel efficiency, about a 4 mile per gallon difference on average when I'm running just the van. Trailer's a whole different story. So the trip ended up being from when I left Wyoming to when I arrived in Quartzsite, 2,861 miles. That is more than twice the distance of a straight drive from Wyoming to Quartzsite on the straightest route, which is about 12 to 1,300 miles, cutting across Wyoming and then going down through Utah and through Las Vegas and on down into Arizona. I averaged 10.39 miles per gallon hauling the trailer, as opposed to the 18 miles a gallon I normally average on the highway. That works out to $1,096.43 in fuel, and that does not include camping fees or the alternator that went out in Deming after I left City of Rocks. Cheapest fuel was Wyoming and Texas. Wyoming averaged $3.64.9. Texas averaged $3.62.9. The most expensive fuel was Colorado, which averaged $4.37.4, New Mexico, which averaged $4.25.7, and Arizona, which averaged a whopping $4.48.4. Average cost per mile then for this trip for fuel alone was 38.3 cents per mile, which is pretty steep. Camping fees, if I add those in, and this includes Abilene State Park for Lollapalooza, City of Rock State Park for Cocoa Fest 2021, and 2 RV park stays between the 2 meetups, because with the trailer in particular, there's limited free boondocking in West Texas and southern New Mexico anyways, and when you throw in the trailer and the limitations that presents with getting off-road and on primitive roads, there's just not much in the way of options. So I ended up having 2 RV park stays between there as well. So all of those together came up to $698.50, which means this trip costs $1,800 for fuel and camping. Throw in the alternator that went out and it was more than $2,000. So the bottom line is that travel is expensive right now, especially if you're driving a larger rig that gets poor fuel efficiency, and or if you're traveling in areas with limited free camping options, because RV park and even state park fees are going up. Will I do this again next year? Not in the same way, for sure. Either it'll be a straight trip from Wyoming to Quartzsite, which is less than half the fuel costs and no camping expenses, because I know places I can camp for free, many places I can camp for free along that route, or I will travel without the trailer next year to cut my fuel expenses almost in half and make it easier to find free camping and just have to put up with not being as comfortable for the winter. I am glad I was able to do it this year, but I do not expect to be able or even willing to repeat it in the future. Even if I can afford it next year, I don't think I'm going to. I doubt I'll be willing to do it. It's too much money. So let's talk about traffic. That's the second big observation. Traffic has been crazy this weekend. Saturday from City of Rocks in New Mexico to Benson, Arizona, and then again on Sunday from Benson to Quartzsite. The roads were jam-packed most of the trip. I mean, every lane on the highway, bumper to bumper. I mean, traffic was moving. We didn't run into any huge slowdowns or anything, but traffic was moving. But it was just nonstop, crazy traffic, like if you're in a city, except for we're in the middle of nowhere. Now, I am used to seeing that around, Tucson, obviously, and in that area. We did the 8 and then took 85 up to 10 again to bypass Phoenix. There's usually a lot of traffic when you first get back on 10 because it's a busy corridor between Phoenix and LA, but it does usually settle down pretty good. It didn't settle down this time. It just stayed jam-packed. I was discussing this with some friends that I was traveling with over the weekend, and our consensus was that it must be due to people traveling early for Thanksgiving, after a lot of people maybe not traveling last year and a lot of people not wanting to fly still, although that's picking up too. But this is just an incredible amount of traffic, even the weekend ahead of Thanksgiving. So my third observation from traveling these past 5 weeks concerns camping availability. It can be difficult to find places to camp still, and you've probably been hearing about this over this past year anyways. I was curious how that would go. I did find places that were full, but I found more situations where there were sites available on certain dates, but not necessarily the dates I needed, or they were available for 1 or 2 or 3 nights, but I needed a longer period of time. There is enough camping pressure still going on that it can be challenging to find sites. There are options if you're flexible in when and where you're traveling. However, if you're on a fixed route and schedule, as I was between Abilene State Park and City of Rock State Park, where I had almost 3 full weeks to cover 600 miles, it may be difficult to find places to camp when you need and where you need to camp. But if you can be flexible about where you're going, there is definitely places out there. It's not like everywhere is full. Interestingly, despite the heavy Thanksgiving travel traffic, Quartzsite seems quieter than it often is by this time of year. Definitely not hard to find places in Quartzsite, whether you're on RV parks. I see plenty of availability at RV parks still. I don't know if there was any reservations, but as far as sites, I'm seeing room at RV parks, and on BLM land is not nearly as crowded as it often is this time of year, and the LTVA is not nearly as crowded as it often is this time of year. So I've been driving around a bit and checked it out, and it's definitely not as busy as normal this time of year. So those are my observations from traveling over the past 5 weeks. I'm curious, what have you been experiencing in your recent travels? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget, travel, to send me links for stories or details of stories that you think might be of interest. You can email those to me at robert.witham@gmail.com. Thank you to those who've already shared news and links. Now that you know what's going on out there, please like this video if you enjoyed it or found it helpful. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And thanks for joining me in this travel news episode.